Have you lost the connection with your higher self? Are you noticing the dis-ease of the outside world? It's time to reconnect with nature and each other and raise our consciousness, vibration, and frequency. Together we can create a world of peace and abundance. It's Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller.
Hello, and welcome to the show this afternoon. I have a wonderful guest this afternoon. I thought I was a jack of all trades, but we're going to talk about Regan Forston. He is a past board member and in charge of public engagement for the Newton Institute. Now, the Newton Institute is their mission really, as I've looked at them on the internet and studied a little bit, they want to uncover the mysteries of the afterlife. And they've had over 70,000 successful sessions, and in a sense have mapped out what kind of goes on between our death and the afterlife and what's happening to us. Is that right, Regan?
Yes, that's it in a nutshell.
It's
like the mystery. It's still a mystery, but we seem to be uncovering a lot. What happens.
I know there's a lot of practitioners for the Newton Institute. But you've done a lot in your life. In fact, you've written a book called 3 Hours and 33 Minutes in Heaven, which I suspect is about your experience.
It's about my personal time over there.
And you're also a quantum healing hypnosis practitioner, and you help people with their health issues, right?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. I actually have incorporated the quantum healing hypnosis technique along with the Newton Institute Life Between Lives process. So my sessions are a little bit longer than normal, but I always figured, well, hey, if you're there on the other side, why not ask questions about your physical health? Because most people have some issues, and to find out why they have their issues, and also ask for a healing, which sometimes takes place, which it blows my mind. But it's this stuff is. It's unbelievable what we're able to do now, and how real this is becoming.
See, and I want to talk a little bit about that life between life and that healing process. But before we get into that, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your life? I'm reading your bio here, and it looks like you really have been the jack of all trades throughout your life.
It feels like when I put it all down, that's what it seemed to me too. As you're going through it, little by little, next chapter in your life, the next chapter just kind of unfolds, and you don't think much about it. But then, looking back 72 years, I go, oh my gosh! If I would have thought about this when I was 20 years old, everything was going to happen to me. I would have said, "Oh, you're crazy." But it's funny how. I've always kind of had this inner guidance, I guess you would say, or this somehow my intuition was always getting me to follow the breadcrumbs that were set out in front of me to see where it would go, And once I started trusting that this intuition that I had would lead me in the right direction to better my life, then I started giving myself up to that in a sense and figure there's got to be some kind of higher guidance or somebody that's helping me along the way or giving me the clues or showing me what path to go down. And that led me, it's just, crazy, especially when I had a successful real estate company when I was 27, 28 years old. And all of a sudden I give that up to become a professional clown. It's like, that's kind of nuts.
And after that, you were a magician and then a comedian and a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
So, and a Hollywood actor, right?
Yeah. I spent 12 years in Hollywood doing a lot of extra work in films, and I was lucky to get starred in, I think, 37 short and independent films where I actually got to kill somebody or do something fun, playing the bad guy or the clown or whatever,
How awesome. So
it all led me to this, which is interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't you tell us how it led to coming into the Institute and learning the hypnosis the way you have and what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, back in 2008, when the financial crisis hit the world, I was doing shows, corporate custom comedy shows as a ventriloquist, and I would have these different characters that we would roast the people in the company. And it was a little niche that I had that was very successful with a lot of big companies around the world. And but when 2008 happened, all of a sudden companies are feeling embarrassed to spend like $5,000 on an entertainer to come in. So I was lucky to get hired, or they'd offer me $500, and I couldn't live on that, you know. So again, this inner guidance. I'm with my girlfriend at the time, and she looks down the newspaper, and she, out of the blue, she says, "Oh, here's this thing where you can have at this college, and they give you a free 2 weeks to learn how to become a hypnotist." And of course, I'm thinking, okay, I can't get hired as a comedian now, but if I became a hypnotist, I could do the same show over and over again in the same place, because that's what some hypnotists do, because it's the same show, but you have different people every week. So it takes on a different flavor, you know. Right. So when I went to the college there, I soon found out that, oh my gosh, there's so much knowledge on how the mind works and how you can go into your mind like a computer and take out what doesn't work and put in the good stuff. And I just had this calmness that came over me and says, you know what, I think I want to help people to change their lives rather than making them quack like ducks on stage, you know. So I took that route. And so when I graduated, I didn't want to do anything but this, but it takes a long time to build a practice. So after a while, I moved out of my apartment, moved into my van, and I just started seeing clients all over the place. It led me to places in Southern California, then in Mexico for a year and a half. When I was going back and forth between there and San Diego, seeing clients. And all of a sudden, I'm exposed to the underbelly of the world, you know, whereas I'd been a comedian for 30 years and had all this, everything's fun and happy. And then then the opposite happened. And the people that I would run into on the road, or that would be sent to me, it seemed to be like meant to be, were these people that had these horrific stories to tell about all the abuse and the pain and the suffering in the world. And so it's kind of like God had me see both sides of the thing, you know, the best and then the worst, to try to help me to develop myself, I guess, so that I could do this work. So I was actually in a hospital bed. They thought I was going to die back about 2016. And I remember this book that I read by Dr. Newton called Life Between Lives, that I read in the 90s. And all of a sudden that just came to my mind. And then I decided, I was on my deathbed there. I thought, well, geez, if I get out of this, I think that's what I want to do. And miraculously, I was healed, walked out of the, you know, after a month in the hospital. I came home and I searched the Newton Institute, and I thought, you know what, I want to have this experience myself, like just visiting heaven for a few hours like their clients did. I want to have that experience myself and then decide if I want to be the practitioner. So I went to one of their trainings, and I was the hardest one in the class. I was the last one to have the experience. Everybody in the first session, you know, about 3 or 4 days into training there, you have a session, everybody was talking about, oh my God, and I didn't make it, you know. So they worked with me another couple of days and went back, and then boom, everything happened. And I had the best, I guess, the best experience of my life to that point, you know, where, you know, 12 things, like when I spent the 3 hours in heaven over there, there's 12 miraculous things that happened that I think about almost every day, you know, and that's been, 6-7 years ago now. So I went on through the training for a year and became a therapist. And now I'm helping dozens and dozens and dozens of people have the same experience I did, which is to experience themselves in heaven for a few hours. And I love the work. It's sessions are like 5 hours long. So I had one went 8 hours. Can you believe that? Oh my gosh, having somebody in trance for 8 hours. But that's where we don't end the sessions until they know it's time to come back. You know, generally that's 3 or 4 hours, you know, of a session, but sometimes it goes on longer and longer, depending on what people are doing over there. So basically what we found out, as I did when I did it, is that God, it seems to have opened a portal. I call it a portal, like it's like a class 101 in heaven, you know, where you get to have a glimpse of things. There's 90% of my clients that I help, just as I did, we get to go before a council and we prepare a list of questions ahead of time. Like if you could think about right now, William, if you could have a list of questions and you could go before a council of 5 or 6 or 10 of the wisest life coaches that you could imagine, that could help you in your life. Wouldn't that be cool? You could ask them all kinds of questions, and they would have the wisdom and everything to help you identify what your mission is, and first of all, and your purpose for being alive. And then you can ask questions about, how am I going to accomplish my mission now? What I'm supposed to do. Most people, like including me, I found out that I was actually in the middle of my mission, but I wasn't. It's just because it just kind of happens. But getting that confirmation and then having them give me some clues of how I could become even better at it, which I've incorporated in my life now, and has made life so much easier and more wonderful. It was a great experience. Not to say even seeing my mom, my dad, and my brother that were in heaven, I was able to see them for a little bit. And that was the icing on the cake, so to speak, there too.
Yeah. In that experience, you mentioned 12 things that you remember on a daily basis. Kind of give us an idea of that process and what brought you to those 12 things.
Yeah. Well, the main thing I learned overall that my clients learn, and that the 70,000 people that have had this experience get from this, is they realize that, first of all, their life has purpose and meaning. They realize that they chose their life and their life circumstances to be in for learning. It's all about learning to love more. It's learning to be more compassionate and kind, and more patient. All of the things, I think, in people that are Christian in Corinthians that Paul mentioned, like what love is. This is what this is all about. And one of the other thing that I learned is I'm never alone, and that I actually do have a guide that's kind of watching after me all the time. I had seen him in my dreams a few times, and a few times when I was in deep meditation, I would have these experiences, like out-of-body experiences, where I find myself in another place, and there's always a guide or something there, like teaching me something. Teaching me something about love or something I need to look at in my own life. And I wrote those down in my journals and things like this. But now it became more real when I actually came face to face with my guide. My guide's name was Rebazar, which is an interesting name. And he was there always by me in the different places that I visited in heaven. He was always to my right, always just kind of standing there, helping me get to the next place. And people, sometimes I've had my clients, they go in this process, we use them going to a past life as like a portal to get to the place we go between lives. So, and it blows my mind, about 90% of my clients easily, in a deep state, because this process we have has been fine-tuned over 40 years. We get them to this very deep state of relaxation. It's just the feel. It's actually, we recreate the process of falling asleep, as I would say. But what we do is we keep our clients right on the verge of falling asleep. And when your body is that relaxed, where at any moment you could just boom and go to sleep, but yet we're communicating, it seems like that's where everybody has like I call it a God switch. And boom, they can go right to we ask the higher self at that point to take us to a past life, and people just do. So we record all this for them because the thing that blows people's minds is that they're totally aware. It's like you become like you're two places at once. Like you're seeing all these images and getting all these feelings coming through from a past life. But at the same time, they know that I'm sitting next to them and that I'm talking to them. It's I got kind of liken it to like when you see a medium on TV. If you've seen a medium or a medium show, and that medium is totally wide awake, but with their eyes wide open, everything, they're seeing images and they're just telling you what they're seeing in their images. Well, this is just the next step down from that, where people that can't do that automatically, getting them in this beautiful state of relaxation kind of turns them into their own medium, where they actually are seeing their loved ones rather than seeing through the eyes of the medium, where it's, like there's no go between. You're just like right there, So far too, in our 70,000 cases, we've had no negative, people say, well, what about, you're going to get attacked by some negative forces and everything. And we haven't found that to be the case. It seems like whatever God's allowed. Well, I actually went back a second time. 28 of us therapists, we swapped, we're doing research. So we swapped sessions. Like I swapped session with a really great therapist from Alabama. and we did it over Zoom. And on my second trip there, all 28 of us were asking the council over there about COVID, about what's going on with COVID and all that. That was about a year ago now, I guess. And so we all asked the same questions, and we came back, and we had all our answers, and we put it together and came out in a PowerPoint thing about that. And what surprised us all about COVID is on the other side, it's like kind of they're not really concerned about it that much. It's just something we're all going through, you know. And first of all, they said, hey, everybody that died, they're over here, they're doing fine. You know, they're all partying, you know,
Right.
I mean, they're fine, you know, but they did say one thing that came up, and when we asked about that was they were saying that sometimes the universe, God, whatever, uses the dark to bring people to the light. You know, in other words, a lot of times things that we look at as negative, horrible, bad are actually wake-up calls, or they're stirring things up enough for people. And I started realizing that look what COVID's done. I mean, it's kind of brought things to a head. You know, people started going back to church again. They started getting more spiritual. They started thinking about God more, started thinking about what's their purpose of their life and that. So that's been one of the, you know, the positives that's come out of COVID, you know.
Right.
But the thing I have to tell you, the biggest experience, and this is the one that I feel so grateful for happening, and this happened on my way back from heaven. It's like I'm finding myself looking down at the earth, excuse me, and Rebazar, he's to my right, and I'm sensing I'm kind of in my peripheral vision, but he's there with me, and I'm seeing the earth, and the way I was looking at it was different than 2 hours before. It's like I'm coming back, and you just see the earth just floating in space there. And it just like, I'm just going, wow, this is just beautiful, you know. But then as I started getting a little closer to earth, I started getting all emotional and started having emotional pain. So Rebazar stops me and he says, are you sure you want to do this? And I knew what he meant intuitively. He said to come back and do this work, the Newton Institute. And I said, I think I used the F word. I said, F yes, you know, I was so in this trance state, which surprised me afterwards when I heard it on the tape, you know, but that's how excited I was. But then Rebazar says to me, he says, okay, if you're going to do this work, there's 4 things you have to do, or your physical body is going to not be able to handle the energy and you're going to die. And I went, oops, okay, what do I have to do? He said, number 1, as you wake up in the morning, and for people listening to this, I think this would go across the board for everybody to help them. He says, do some sort of spiritual exercise as you wake up in the morning. And I heard this prayer in my mind, and it said, bless this day and those I serve as I keep 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot planted firmly on earth to accomplish my mission of being kind at any cost. When I was over there on the other side, I found out that the reason I decided to be born in this body, that my main reason, besides doing this work I'm doing now, was to learn to be kind and to be more selfless. And when I was up there before the council, I had 4, I'm picturing now, there were 4 spiritual beings on my council when I was in heaven. One of them was a Chinese looking gentleman named Late C. And I can just picture his eyes right now. When he would look at me, you just feel like a bucket of love got dumped over you. And he's got this great sense of humor. He's funny, but he goes so deep with you, you know. Well, during part of the process there, one of the teachers they had hoods on it with mine, was a woman master. She took her hood off and she said she was very happy with the progress that I'd made in kindness, and also a second thing I came down here to do was to balance my masculine, feminine energy. And she said I was doing a good job on that. And I remember when I was standing before the council, how good that made me feel, like, okay, I'm getting something right, yeah. You know, with all the screw-ups I've had in my life, you know. So it's this process, it's just, I would just say it's just completely wonderful. But to get to the best part, okay, so I'm back. And then just as I'm getting a little closer to earth, he halts me again. And I find myself standing on a cliff. And immediately I recognized it from a dream I had before I even became spiritual, back in my 20s, where I had the first dream I ever remember. It was such a powerful dream. I shook my wife awake and I told her, I said, "Oh my God, I just had this amazing dream, and I think I passed some sort of spiritual test or something," because I had found myself in a plane crash. I was a survivor, and when I got out of the plane, there was an evil presence. It was chasing me, and I ran all the way up to the top of this mountain, fearing for my life that this horrible evil was going to devour me or whatever it was. I got to the edge of the cliff in this dream, and all of a sudden, I knew I had to make a quick decision. There was a hand that came up through the cloud, like to save me. It looked like a Pillsbury Doughboy hand, almost coming up out of the cloud. But I knew I could jump to the hand to safety, or I could turn around and face what was following me. And I decided at that moment on the cliff, I said, "I'm going to turn around." And just as I started to turn around, I woke up. So now I am 40-something years later. I find myself back on the top of the cliff. It's like someone had a pause button on that dream or that experience, and it was on pause. And now 40 years later, someone unpaused it. And it's just as I'm turning around to face that fear. And this facilitator was with me. He says, "Jump to the hand of safety." And I said, "No, I'm going to turn around." It's so weird. I'm this animated in trance. I'm going, "No, I'm going to face this fear." So I turned around, and about 2 inches from my nose was a man smiling at me. And he whispers to me, he says, "I forgive you." And he gave me a hug. And then I looked behind him, and as far down the mountain as I could see was a line of people that were lined up all to hug me, to say that they forgave me for the crap I did to them in another lifetime, I'm guessing, and to forgive me. So I stayed there on that cliff as one by one by one, they all hugged me. And the last one was this little girl, looked like about 9 or 10 years old, had this beautiful hair all the way down to her waist. And she had this beautiful angelic smile. And I'm entranced, but as Regan, I'm thinking, "Oh, what could I have done to this poor little girl?" Because it's from my Regan thinking. And I just started crying, bawling my eyes out. And she just hugged me and says, "I forgive you." And then I was back up in space and coming down to earth. So what I felt from that, when I came back out of trance or something, I swear I felt like a tank had been lifted off of me, and I think this forgiveness that I got is what I needed to do to be able to do this work, that I had to be more of a clear channel, that I had to have done a lot of my work on that, to get done. But that was my biggest experience, there. But in my past life that I had, getting to there was not very pleasant either, because I was actually crucifying people as a Roman soldier.
Oh, wow.
And I started crying because my Regan self, who seeing this, and if I'm on that horse, I'm going up and down this thing, seeing all these people on crosses, and I'm feeling justified, because I'd been brainwashed by Caesar that these people were nuts. They're talking about some guy walking on water and he bring people from the dead. They're just some stupid cult, But on my deathbed, I recanted, and I said F to Caesar, to my daughter who was standing next to me when I died. And I swore at that time that I would never do something again ever in another life that I knew was wrong to do, if someone just told me to do it because they have some power over me. Wow. So I think that's why I was kind of a rebel growing up, that I never wanted to pay attention to people telling me to do stuff, and I know I'm not doing that again,
That's an amazing story. I appreciate you sharing that. If people are interested in getting their own experience this way, what do they do? Where do they go?
Well, we have 250 therapists worldwide. We're in 46 different countries, and I think we do about 8 different languages. They can go to the newtoninstitute.org and say, find a therapist, and the people can probably find one not too far from them. Now, because of COVID, we started doing this on Zoom a little bit, and it has blown our minds that we're having almost the same success rate just doing it over Zoom. So now I have one of my other therapists here. She's actually on the board here in the San Francisco area, and she's doing lots of she's somehow connected to India. And so the middle of the night, she's up doing sessions for people over there. So not all of the therapists are comfortable doing it. A lot of them are old school that think that, you need to do it in person, which I say is better. I prefer doing it that way. But sometimes I have people that find me and they've seen me on another podcast. They go, "No, I feel comfortable about you, Regan, so we'll do it on Zoom." And there they are, just like we're talking now. Yeah.
What's your website?
Oh, my website is Visit theafterlife.com. Real simple. Visit theafterlife.com. There's videos on there. There's even you can see a session on there of someone going through this. All kinds of questions are answered. And I'm giving away 2 free, actually anybody that listens to this podcast, I'm giving away 2 free books on it.
Excellent. So definitely go visit the website. Check out his book, 3 hours and 33 minutes in heaven. Thank you so much for joining me today. Love and peace.
This has been Spiritual Revolution Radio with Dr. Will Miller. For more information or to be a guest, please visit lifebydesign.institute. Join us next week for another edition of Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller. This has been a production from a podcast studio.